Hey, welcome back. So it's been maybe an hour, maybe a little more. In my case, it's actually been about an hour and 45 minutes because I was working on something else and just came back. So it's been autolyzing for an hour and 45 minutes, which is great. Oh yeah, a couple clarifications from last time. We should have covered it, so I forgot to mention that. And 350 grams of water is like 1 3/4 cups. Not 1.5, just over 1 3/4, maybe like 1 7/8. But all right, so let's check out what we got. Look at this. So if you look here, we basically have the same dough as before, but see how it's not sticky? And also look at this crazy thing. It's like it's a lot more stretchy, and so that's kind of what happens over that process, that period of time. You've got a much more malleable dough that is a lot more, it's gonna be a lot easier to work with. Barely even sticking to my hands. Pretty cool. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna add in the starter and the salt. That's it. Mix it up a little bit, and I'm gonna use my hands to mix this up. You could probably use the mixer, but I like to use my hands because in this particular part, they're kind of separated, so I kind of like, mash them together a little bit. So anyway, I'm gonna add 100 grams of starter. It's going to be about, in your case, I don't know, from the mason jar. For me, it's gonna be like 2 giant spoonfuls. So it'll probably be right about a cup, maybe. Oh yeah, also my starter, if you can kind of see, it's like really bubbly. I don't know if you can see that very well. So that good, that means it's pretty much good to go. So I've got my scale out. I'm gonna add some starter right there on top. So that was about 60 grams there, and then a little more. I don't know, I actually did 120 there, which is fine. It's not quite as exact with the starter. So what's that gonna be like? Yeah, 2 giant spoonfuls, or maybe like, I don't know, I'll measure it out a little bit later. Not sure how many cups that would be. And then the salt. So 10 grams, which seems like a lot, but it's really your only flavor. So let's add 10 grams over here. I kind of added around the outside just so it doesn't get right in the starter. Oh. A lot of salt. There we go. 12 grams, a little more than necessary, but that's okay. So if we check this out here, we've got our salt and our starter. Let's see how they're kind of separated. So I'm just going to be kind of grabbing it like this, and really just, this is called stretching and folding. So I'm just grabbing it and just kind of folding it over itself. Grabbing it and kind of folding it over itself, trying not to, it's hard with the phone, trying not to stretch out the gluten, but really stretching it, kind of getting this going. I'm gonna do this for a couple of minutes, really to mix in all of the salt, mix in all of the starter, and kind of get that going. That's good. So you can just kind of watch as I kind of get this working here. So yeah, that's it. So we're just gonna keep stretching and folding. The whole point here is to really get it mixed up, but try to get it mixed up without really tearing the gluten. Really try to watch the dough and, put your fingers through it. Make sure that it's not staying separate. Scoop down from the bottom. Just keep stretching this thing around on itself. Mixing it up without, causing any tears. Actually, it's looking pretty good. Not too bad. Eventually, you'll see the wetness of the starter start to kind of go away as you're kind of mixing this around. You wouldn't really call this kneading. This is more just stretching and folding. So, stretching it, folding it down on itself. And yeah, just gonna do this for another minute or so. Pretty much it. Oh, hey, I got a helper coming over to maybe get a little better of a view. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so yeah, you can kind of see we're kind of pulling it apart a little bit, stretching it, and pushing it down. Pulling it apart a little bit, stretching it, kind of pushing it down, really breaking that barrier. There's no air bubbles to break. Later on in the process, we're concerned about breaking air bubbles. This thing hasn't even started to ferment because we just added the starter. So we're really just kind of stretching it out, getting it going. And look at that, we can already see this dough. It's kind of like transforming itself. So it's keeping that stiffness that we saw from the very first part. But it's also it's also maintaining a bit of a kind of like a soft like pillow form. Just look at that. We can actually pull it out a little bit and kind of fold it over itself. And notice how it's not really sticking to my hands. This is a sign of a really good dough. And yet it's still a little wobbly. Isn't that crazy? It's wobbly like that while not having air. Normally you would get that wobble a little bit later when you have the air pockets. And that's just a sign that you've got a nice high water content with a good structure. So again, I'm just kind of folding it over, stretching it, folding, and that's it. Just gonna put it back in there. I'm gonna cover this thing, let it rise overnight. If our starter's healthy, it should maybe double overnight. So tomorrow morning would be, in your case, Saturday morning. So we'll shape it into dough, put it back into a bowl, and then bake it later in the day. So there won't be another video because the video will be the workshop. But in my case, tomorrow morning, I'll probably shape this and then bake this in the afternoon, or maybe throw it in the fridge and bake it in the evening. I'll let this thing rise at room temperature overnight, covered. So for example, it's nice to taste the dough. It's a little salty, but I think that'll be all right. Just cover her up, keep her on the counter in a warm spot by the fridge, and that's about it. So yeah, could you hit the little button because I got some sticky? Thank you.